Greetings out there, Suzanne in Ohio here. I'm just here with the show and tell for the first finished bird kit of the series of 4. So I wanted you to see him totally done. He might not look all that different to you from when the last time was you saw it, but I get such a satisfied feeling when I know absolutely everything is done. So this was, like I said, the #1 bird in the bird kits. There are 4. And this was American Goldfinch. And I decided to put him in a setting of thistles since that would be natural for him. Now, if you didn't see any of my other videos, I'll just explain a little bit. My goal was to create the bird singly, separately as an applique, and then I cut him out, created a background, and decided what the other elements were going to be, and then stitched it all together. Now, I got myself into a big project with these thistles. As I said in my last video, that's quite a bit of stitching. I'm going to try not to do that one again, although they turned out very, very stunning. Smashing, as a matter of fact. Very eye-catching when you look at it from a normal distance. I finished this one out in a loose style. Well, the whole thing is a loose style, but I kept the cattywampus edges and the raw edges, and that's the way I like my things. You could always do yours different. I backed it with a simple piece of fabric. I created these two, this hanging mechanism. This is popular in the quilting world. And then my little bamboo skewer fits right there, and that's your hanging device. So there he is, all finished. He was very satisfying, fun to do. And the bird took no time at all. It was them thistles that I got myself into all that work. So if you haven't started a project or don't have a kit to work on, you can find these kits on my Etsy site, or you can follow my leads and directions in my YouTube videos, and then just create a piece and get to work on it. You can put as much or as little slow stitching on it as you want. You can create it in a whimsical style. They can be much simpler than this or even more complicated than this, whatever your style is and whatever you like to do. So today I will be going on to my next kit, which I want to show you. I gathered some pieces and parts here, but I've decided to do the tufted titmouse. And for those of you that didn't see any of my other videos, what I've got right here in this pile is exactly what you'll get in a kit if you order from me. You will get a colored image printed on fabric and already attached to a piece of, I use felt for batting, and a piece of Pellon in the back for a stabilizer. I love to stitch through that. It makes my stitches really nice. And then, let me get this unpinned here. That comes to you just like that, ready to stitch on if you want to. And then you get an extra piece of this Pellon, and I'll show you how to use that because I'm actually going to start this bird. And it's very, very thin and non-woven, and you can see right through it and trace out your pattern shapes. Now, I can't and don't want to bore everybody and go over every little detail of how to do it, but you'll watch me and go back to the very first video because I took that very slow and showed you every step what to do. So you also get a printed colored copy, and then you get, let's see where my page is, you get a black and white grayscale print, and then you get a line drawing. Now you can use these pieces for all kinds of things. You could trace them off on fabric and make that an embroidery project. You can do anything with these that you want, and you'll have them in your kit, and you can do them over and over again. So that I also encouraged everybody, go back online and look at a tufted titmouse and get some ideas in your mind, because the color shades vary from photograph to photograph, and you'll want to create something that feels good for you. So let's take these out of the way. And the first thing we want to do is sort of mark him off into zones. And we want to do that because for every little zone we create, we can use a different fabric scrap. And that makes your finished project so interesting. It can also be overlaid with stitching and lace. So whatever style you and whatever method you want to create, that's what you should do. So I'm going to do this just from memory. I'm not saying I'll keep it this way, because I should even have a picture up on my iPad so I can determine how to mark all this off. But I know for sure his beak will be separate. And then this little zone here, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark right on my image. That will be a darker shade. I could make lots of little areas or just a few larger ones. But I'm going to do something like this just to delineate that crest area they always have. And then I will do something probably like this. I want to create as much pattern in this image as I possibly can. Because he's all gray and natural with a tiny little buff area right there. But the more different fabrics I can put on him, the prettier he'll be as a finished piece. Now, all this dark shading area, what I'll do is go ahead and roughly mark that out. And you can see it doesn't have to be precise. Nothing has to be perfect. We talked about that a lot. Whatever you do will end up just delightful, so don't stress over anything. Now, this area here is his buffy area. The rest of it I'll do in white, and then if I need to add any shadowing in that white area, I'll do it with either stitching or I'll do it with my ink tints. And then maybe stitch over it. You could use a colored pencil or anything just to put a little shading in there. Now, I know his feathers go this way, so I want to stay kind of congruent with that concept. I'll just do something like that. And then the shadow on his back, I'll make that a separate area and that right in there. And then, of course, he's got two main feathers. This image does. Every photograph you look at is kind of different. But I'll take this opportunity to do the tail feathers in two different prints. That way it will give me more interest. Now, I did not do the feet on my goldfinch because they were just too tedious, but I will probably do the feet on this bird. I hope to put him in a setting of pine branches. So this is a very large area here. I can leave it all as one, or I can kind of mark it off like that. All right, so we have our grayscale image marked off, and then we want to overlay pieces of our, excuse me, I can't keep a train of thought here. We're just going to mark on the pellon with a ballpoint pen because it just rolls right over. It's so easy. So I'll put, I'm going to start with the tail feathers because I want to lay them down first because these other feathers will overlap. So we'll just put this on here, and I'll give myself kind of a rough shape here. And I'll go ahead and do the second feather. I'll move that petal on over a little bit. And because I know I want the one feather to tuck underneath the first one, I'll just make it a tiny bit larger. So now, if you do a lot of fabric collage or any kind of sewing, you might want to consider some scissors like these. I think Karen K. Buckley, you can get her stuff on Amazon. I do have some of hers. I love them. But I also have these off brands, and they work just beautiful. So I had to have about 15 of them for my sewing group that met at my house. And I just didn't invest in 15 Karen K. Buckley. So I'm going to cut these apart roughly, leave plenty of space around the outside, and then I'll be cutting those two out first. But let me go over quickly the fabrics that I found that could possibly work. I know I'm going to need some white, so I have just a plain piece of white. I also have an off-white with a tiny little, almost invisible polka dot in it. I have a white with a tiny bit of this yellowy cast to it. And then I found this textured piece. It was just the end off of, it was a scrap. It was one of those novelty prints. These are trees. That's a tree trunk you see there with birds. But some of these little areas with the texture in them, and especially in the trunk of the tree, you get all those different shades of gray right there. So I might do one of his tail feathers in that. And as a matter of fact, I'll just lay that aside so I don't forget. Now, I won't use all these, and there's enough fabric here to do 15, 20 birds. But I wanted you to see the possibilities, because when you're looking at your own scraps, it might help you think. This was a novelty print of a little village scene. I mean, it was cityscape. And then, so that gives you all these lines. Here's an actual grid. There's more grid up here. There's this, and then all of this busy, busy, busy print. So any piece and part of him could be cut out of that. This was a novelty print also. It has little owls printed on it. And ignore that. Just use it, and those lines will end up probably not showing so much, but even if they do, how cute is that? Here's one of those fabrics that have the metallic glitter effect on them, and that is also trees. So if I had any place on this bird, I could use that. Now, because this bird's small, I wanted to point out that anytime you have the smaller the print you have, the better, because a big print will get lost in this. And these are off-colored. I picked out a few off-colors because you can always veer your fabric collage into whatever color tones you want. And this is a very nice bluey gray. And this looks like a water droplet print. And this is a plain piece of light blue, and I could put ink tints over that, a wash, and it would be great. Now I found this little scrap of gray feathers. That would be cute somewhere on him, especially if I had a place big enough that the feathers were discernible. And then this is a piece of gray with little white stars in it. So you can see how the thought process goes. I also pulled out this piece of buff because he's going to need that little buffy area right under his wings. And I'm only going to do a couple of these pieces just to refresh your memory how it's done. And then I will get started on this beauty. Oh, let me grab something. I forgot. My glue. When I've cut out my pieces, I use just a little bit of a glue stick. this washable school glue stick works the best. I had another one that was packaged almost exactly like this, and it was way more permanent, so it got pretty stiff under the fabric. This will remain kind of soft, and it'll just hold it in place long enough for you to uh, get your collage going, and you're going to be stitching over it anyway. So this was my underneath feather, this one. So I'm going to lay it right on here, and I can tell now I should have ironed this. Oh, there's so much usable color and texture in these. Now I'm going to cut this slightly larger. I mean slightly, like 1/32 of an inch. But better slightly larger than smaller, because it does tend to pull up and get smaller looking as you're working on it, because your stitches will pull on it. And you can pin this if you want to, but I have pretty good luck just holding on to it with my fingers. And this Pellon tends to stick to the surface of your fabric pretty good. So it's not slippery. It won't slide around all over the place. And I'm going to leave a little extra room here because I know it's going to tuck underneath. So I'm going to lay that one down, and then I could use this again, or I could use something a little darker. I think I'll use something a little darker. I would like to have probably the darkest part of this grid here, because his feather or his tail was in the shadows, and it doesn't have to look gray. Okay, let me see. Do I have the right piece? See, these things are so fine. Oh, yes, I do. All right. I'm just going to hold it with my thumb. You can tell I'm not being perfect. That's something I fight. To really get a painterly, artist-looking piece, the more imperfection it has, the more painterly it looks, the more artistic it looks. And I tend to want everything perfect to the point of ruining it. So I have 2 tail feathers cut out, and I'm just going to lay them on the surface of the colored fabric print so that you can see how they'll look. So this feather will go right here, and this one will go on top. Look how magical that is. It just comes alive. And I will put a tiny bit of glue down, just a couple little dots on each one until I'm sure, and then I'll continue on laying these quadrants or these sections overlapping each other, because the feathers go in that direction. And that is how I will get started. All right, I thought of something else I wanted to show you about finishing off your project. A lot was said about everything in the other videos, but I forgot to really talk a lot about this. I've done a lot of this kind of thing over the years. I've put a lot of plackets on my pieces. So I quick did this, nothing straight, I mean, it's all still crooked, but I wanted to have something to show you what you could do. This adds so much interest to a piece because it triggers the mind, it causes you to look at it again, and it just defines it. So I just wrote Americam Goldfinch on this little piece of white. I didn't even cut off this fuzzy edge, and I took a little scrap of purple. Now, if you're going to add some kind of a placket, please put something behind it, because otherwise it might look like an afterthought. Just get another piece of fabric that coordinates, that sets it off, and gives you the impression of a frame. And then if I were to really put this on here, I would stitch these two pieces together, probably use the purple thread, just a running stitch in and out, and then I will stitch the whole thing on. And if your fabric's too thin, you can even put a little backing under that, because you want that placket to lay nice and flat. All right, so there's another idea for your little repertoire. And now that I've done this much, just to show you how to get started, I can't wait to fill in this bird. I'll have him done and start stitching on him today. So I know it's a quick video. Wanted to get you started on that second kit. If you want to order one, and you'll find that on my Etsy site. It's the same name, Suzanne in Ohio. Capital letters at the beginning of each word, and there are no spaces in between the words. I try to put a link under all my videos, but sometimes I do forget. So I'm just saying that outright. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it. And no matter what you're doing, I hope you're creating and having fun. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.